and the band played Waltzing Matilda as they carried us down the gangway.
Where 100 years ago, Ireland was drawn into the war to end wars, the First World War. And indeed, it is an uncanny coincidence that on this very same day, 100 years later, we are still campaigning against war. And I am going to jail, not because I want to wage war, but because I want peace. It is now a crime in Ireland to want peace. But I think it has to be made clear that Liam Mellows was not a hurler. Liam Mellows was an anti-imperialist who took up arms to stop Ireland being involved in the First World War, that bloody imperialist conflict. We have not taken up arms. We simply went into Shannon to demand that Ireland stops colluding with Washington in its so-called global war against terror. For 13 years, they have been waging war through Shannon. And for 13 years, we have been campaigning against it. We have attended many a march where there's been tens of thousands demanding no war, but we were never listened to. We have attended those marches and heard great speeches from the likes of John Gormley, Michael D. Higgins, Rory Quinn, Eamon Gilmore, all of whom have been in the seat of power and have done nothing when in that position. They have allowed war to continue, weaponry and killers to travel freely through our airport and through our airspace. My imprisonment is only for 2 weeks. So the Irish establishment, in comparison with the establishment in Washington, are slightly more benign. In that if I was living in the land of the free, I would be doing 20 years for what we did. And poor Chelsea Manning is doing 35 years in jail today just because he exposed the truth about war. But Margaretta's imprisonment twice this year in the centenary year of the First World War was a scandal, and the imprisonment of anybody in favour of peace is a scandal. But honestly, our imprisonment pales into insignificance when you consider the decision of the Irish government not to support a UN investigation into war crimes in Gaza. And that should not be a surprise to anybody here, because the bombs, the weaponry that has been rained down on the people of Gaza either came through Shannon Airport or came through Irish airspace. And that is the reality. Back in 2006, we luckily uncovered the fact that Apache attack helicopters were being transported through Shannon to the Israeli Defense Forces to subjugate the Palestinian people. And there is no reason to believe that that is not taking place today and has not taken place for the last 13 years. And of course, we cannot prove that those weapons have since travelled through Shannon, because the Irish government refuses to use the Air Navigation Act, the very same act that they have used to imprison Margareta, and the very same act that they will use to imprison me. If they were to use that act and use their powers of sovereignty, I would not be standing here today. The Irish people would not have the blood of the Iraqi people on their hands, the blood of the Afghani people on their hands, the blood of the Syrian people on their hands, the blood of the Libyan people on their hands. The Irish people would not have colluded with the Guantanamo Express that brought torture victims to Guantanamo. The drums of war have been beating very, very loudly for the last 13 years. Just like the drums of war were beating very loudly 100 years ago. And back then, the Irish establishment supported, or rather danced, to the beat of that drum. And today, they are dancing to the beat of that drum. We are heading for a war in Europe. And it is going to be a US organized war aimed at Russia. We've seen the sanctions, we've listened to the propaganda, it's all over Western Europe, the evil Russians. We are in the first phases of the Third World War. That is what is happening. And the reason it is happening is because we are faced with a huge financial crisis in the capitalist world. They couldn't, a capitalist crisis that is on a par with the crisis of 1929, the Great Crash. And they could only solve that problem, and the only way they solved that problem was through World War II. And they are now getting ready for World War III. And our position, the position of the Galway Alliance Against War, the position of myself and Margareta, is very clear. We have to adhere to the position taken at the Nuremberg trials back in 1949. And one of those principles from the Nuremberg trials stated clearly that citizens, in order to combat crimes against humanity, if necessary, must break national laws. We felt compelled to break those laws, and we were right to break those laws.
I'm talking about the hundreds and thousands of people who opposed World War I and who opposed conscription. And in the end, they succeeded. Conscription was not allowed in Ireland because of the resistance. And we must follow the footsteps of these people. 1916 is coming up. We must reclaim Shannon. Every time that we go into Shannon and we congratulate Clare Daly and Mick Wallace, it means is that we continue our debate with the state over their criminality, their crimes. And all they can respond is by finding us guilty, and we are criminals because we stopped war. The values of our government, which I heard today on the radio, that a mother, Monica O'Connor with 6 children, is going into jail because she educates her own children. She refuses to sign a little box. She refuses to tick a box. I salute this woman. Let us all refuse to tick boxes. Let us refuse and make sure that anything this government wants, we say, no, you're criminals. Thank you.
Is that I am going to jail, not for waging war, but because I am waging a struggle for peace. And that is the state we are in. We now live in a banana republic, and that is the reality. We are owned by the foreign banks, and we are owned by Washington. Welcome to the Banana Republic. Thank you.
Shame on you! Irish government! Shame on you! Irish government! Shame on you! Fine Gael! Shame on you! Fine Gael! Shame on you! Labour Party!
Shame on you.
US military!
Out of Shannon!
Fine Gael!
Shame on you!
Fine Gael!
Shame on you!
Labour Party!
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 Shame on you! Shame on you!
Labour Party!
Shame on you!
Venceremos, Peru! Okay, now. Is there any other girls want to kiss? The radio. I know your face, but
We get a picture of you guys together. One small one.
Good luck, Niall.